You ever notice how some people don't realize what they had until it's gone? They act like they don't care, like they're fine without you, like the connection you had was nothing more than a passing phase. And then out of nowhere they come back, but not in the way you expect. Not with a simple, hey, I miss you or I was wrong. No, it's never that direct. It's subtle, it's calculated, it's layered with all the things they never had the courage to say before. And if you've ever dealt with an avoidant ex, you already know exactly what I'm talking about. Avoidants don't chase, right? They detach. They pull away. They make you feel like they don't need you, like they've moved on without a second thought. But what happens when even they can't outrun feelings anymore? What does it look like when the person who was always so distant, so emotionally unavailable, finally breaks? That's what we're going to talk about today. Because if you've ever been left wondering if they truly felt anything, you're about to get your answer. First, it starts with a sudden shift in communication. The person who once ignored your texts, who kept their replies short, who took days or weeks to respond, suddenly they're reaching out. But not just a casual, hey, how are you? No, it's deeper than that. It's a random message about something only the two of you would understand. A song, an old inside joke, a memory that feels like it came out of nowhere. And here's the thing, it's not random at all. They've been thinking about you. They've been sitting with emotions they don't know how to handle. And for the first time, they don't know how to not reach out. Then comes the confession they never gave before. Avoidants are masters at hiding how they feel. They push people away because emotions make them uncomfortable. But when they finally break, they can't hold it anymore. It might not come out in the most direct way, but you'll hear it. I never stopped thinking about you. I wasn't ready back then. I didn't know how to handle my feelings. These are words they could never say before. Because back then it was easier to run. But now they're facing something they never expected, the realization that losing you hurt. And then out of nowhere, you see the unexpected jealousy or possessiveness. The same person who acted indifferent, who made you feel like you were the only one emotionally invested, is suddenly asking questions they never used to ask. Are you seeing someone? Who's that person in your picture? I saw you were out the other night. They won't always come right out and say they're jealous, but you'll feel it. They'll linger a little longer in conversations, hesitate before responding, leave comments that make it clear they don't like the idea of you moving on. And this is where things start to shift, because for the first time, they're the ones feeling what you once felt. But here's the tricky part, the excuses and justifications. When avoidants finally start to process their emotions, they don't always take full accountability. Instead of saying, I was scared or I messed up, they'll frame it differently. I was going through a lot. I didn't realize what I had. I wasn't ready for something serious. And while there may be truth to that, the reality is they chose to avoid the connection. They chose to walk away. And now they're trying to make sense of why they feel the way they do without fully admitting that they ran from something real. And then just when you think you have them figured out, here comes the test to see if you're still emotionally available. Before they go all in, before they make it clear that they want to reconnect, they need to know, do you still care? So they'll send a feeler text. They'll bring up old memories. They'll ask questions that seem harmless but are really designed to gauge where your head is at. They don't want to look vulnerable. They don't want to risk rejection. So instead, they'll test the waters, trying to see if there's still a door open. And this is where you hold the power. Because then comes the moment of realization for both of you. For them, it's the moment where they understand that avoiding emotions doesn't make them go away. That losing someone who truly cared about them isn't something they can just move on from without consequences. That all the walls they built, all the distance they created didn't protect them from the pain of losing you, it only delayed it. And for you, it's the moment where you see them clearly. Not as the mystery they once were, not as the person you kept trying to figure out, but as someone who had to lose you to finally face themselves. And that's when you have to ask yourself, do you even want them back? Because sometimes, by the time an avoidant finally breaks, you've already healed. Always starts the same way. Silence, distance. They disappear like you never meant anything to them. You reach out and the replies are short, cold, sometimes non-existent. You try to understand, try to make sense of how someone who once seemed so connected to you can detach so easily. But that's how avoidants operate. When things start feeling too deep, too real, they run. Not because they don't care, because caring terrifies them. So you do what you have to do. You let go. Maybe not all at once, maybe not without pain, but eventually you stop trying to pull something out of them that they refuse to give. You stop reaching out, stop checking for their name on your phone, stop hoping that one day they'll wake up and realize what they lost. And just when you finally start feeling okay, when you've begun to move forward, when you've accepted that they may never come back, there it is. Their name pops up, a message, a call, out of nowhere. The person who once made you feel invisible suddenly wants to talk. And it's not just a casual check-in, it's calculated, thought out. Something in their tone feels different. It's hesitant, almost uncertain, like they don't quite know how to navigate this moment. Because for the first time, they're the ones feeling the distance. The space they once created to avoid their emotions has now turned into something else, something they didn't expect. They don't say it outright, but you can feel it. They're reaching for a connection they once pushed away. They bring up old memories, things you thought they had forgotten. I heard that song we used to listen to the other day, or remember that one trip we took. These aren't just small talk. This is their way of trying to pull you back and without exposing too much of themselves. Because vulnerability, that's still something they struggle with, but the fact that they're reaching out at all, that's proof that the walls they built are starting to crack. You can hear it in their voice, see it in the way they type their messages. There's hesitation, almost as if they're trying to measure how much space they still have in your life. They don't want to admit they regret leaving, that the life they thought they'd be fine living without you and it now feels emptier than they expected. So instead of saying, I miss you, they disguise it. I was just thinking about you. I hope you're doing well. I just wanted to say hi. Simple words, but packed with meaning. But here's where it gets interesting. They don't just reach out, they stick around. They start making excuses to keep the conversation going, even if it's about nothing important. Because for the first time, they don't want to be the one who ends it. And that's the shift. That's when you realize that something has changed. Avoidants don't break easily. They spend so much time convincing themselves they don't need anyone, that attachment is a risk, that emotions are something to be controlled, not embraced. But what they don't realize until it's too late is that pushing someone away doesn't erase the connection. It just buries it. And eventually something forces them to dig it up. Maybe it's the realization that no one else understood them the way you did. Maybe it's seeing you move on. Maybe it's just the absence of what they once took for granted. Whatever it is, when they finally break, they don't know how to handle it. They thought they were in control, that by avoiding their emotions, they were protecting themselves. But now, for the first time, they're on the other side of it. And it doesn't feel as safe as they thought it would. So what do? Do you let them back in? Do you answer? Do you play along? That's the part only you can decide. But one thing is for sure, when an avoidant finally reaches out, it's not random. It's not by accident. It's because for the first time, they're feeling everything they spent so long avoiding. And now they're the ones searching for answers. At first, they keep it surface level. They reach out, test the water, see if there's still space for them in your life. But then something shifts. The longer they stay in your orbit, the harder it becomes for them to keep the walls up. And then it happens, the confession they never gave before. The words you once would have done anything to hear suddenly spill out, not because you asked for them, not because you begged for clarity, but because they can't keep them inside anymore. Avoidants don't do vulnerability. They don't sit down and openly express their emotions because emotions make them feel exposed, like they're losing control. That's why, when you were together, they never gave you the reassurance you needed. They were distant when you needed them close, cold when you needed warmth. And for the longest time, you blamed yourself. You wondered if you were asking for too much, if you were the problem, if you should have just been okay with the scraps of affection they were willing to give. But now the truth is coming out, and it's not because you asked for it. It's because they can't avoid it anymore. They start revealing things they once swore they didn't feel. I wasn't ready. I pushed you away because I was scared. I didn't know how to handle my emotions back then. They admit to things they once denied, things you tried so hard to get them to acknowledge when it actually mattered. And it's strange, isn't it? Because for so long you wondered if they ever cared at all. And now here they are telling you exactly what you needed to hear, but when you no longer need it. The words come out in pieces, hesitant and unpolished, because they're not used to speaking this way. Vulnerability still feels unnatural to them, but they can't stop themselves. The emotions they ran from for so long have finally caught up to them, and for the first time, they're forced to sit with it. The weight of their own actions, the reality of what they lost, it's all hitting them at once. And this time, they don't have an escape plan. Maybe they tell you they miss you. Maybe they admit that they think about you more than they should. Maybe they don't say it outright, but it's in the way they linger, in the way their voice softens, in the way they bring up the good times instead of the reasons things ended. They are trying in their own way to say what they were never strong enough to say before. And deep down, they're hoping it's not too late. But here's the thing: when they finally break, when they finally confess, it's not just about you. It's about them realizing that the thing they feared most, emotional closeness, is the very thing they now crave. The same depth they once ran from is now the thing they regret losing. And now they have to face the consequences of their own avoidance. The confession isn't just about admitting feelings. It's about them seeing themselves clearly for the first time. It's about them recognizing that pushing love away didn't protect them, it left them empty. And now here they are standing in front of you, trying to piece together the mess they created, trying to make sense of the emotions they spent so long pretending didn't exist. So what do you do with that? Do you take them back? Do you trust that they've changed? Do you let them back into the space they once abandoned? That's up to you. But one thing is certain: the moment an avoidant finally breaks, the moment they finally confess, is the moment they realize that no amount of distance could erase what they felt. And no amount of avoidance could change the fact that losing you was the one thing they never truly prepared for. At first, they acted like it didn't matter. Like you could walk away, move on, disappear from their life, and it wouldn't faze them. That's what avoidants do. They convince themselves that attachment is a burden, that needing someone is a weakness. So when things ended, they didn't fight for you. They didn't try to stop you from leaving. They let you go, maybe even made it look easy. And for a while, you believed them. You believed the silence, the lack of effort, the cold detachment. You thought they had moved on without a second thought. But then something changes. You notice a shift. It's subtle at first. A strange comment, a lingering question, an offhand remark that doesn't quite fit the indifference they once showed. And then you realize what's happening: jealousy, possessiveness. The person who once seemed completely unaffected by your absence suddenly cares about where you are, what you're doing, and most importantly, you're doing it with. They won't come right out and say it. They won't admit they feel threatened. That would require them to acknowledge emotions they've spent their entire life avoiding. So instead, it shows up in the little things. Maybe they casually ask if you're seeing someone. Maybe they make a joke about your social media post, something playful on the surface but laced with a hidden edge. Maybe they mention a mutual friend and say, "Oh, I heard you were out the other night." And suddenly it clicks, they're paying attention more than they want you to know. This is the part that surprises them the most, because jealousy wasn't supposed to be part of the equation. When they walked away, they thought they were in control. They thought they had successfully compartmentalized their feelings, locked them away somewhere they'd never have to deal with. But now the idea of you with someone else, that's something they never prepared for. They didn't think it would bother them until it did. Here's where it gets interesting. Instead of owning up to what they feel, they try to mask it. They act casual, detached, like they're just making conversation. But you can hear it in their voice, see it in their eyes. It's in the way they hesitate before asking certain questions, the way they linger a little too long in a conversation, the way they suddenly find excuses to reach out more often. It's in the way they downplay any new person in their life while subtly fishing for information about yours. They might even take it a step further. Maybe they start posting more, making sure you see that they're doing just fine without you. Maybe they drop hints about someone new in their life just to see how you react. Maybe they try to reconnect in a way that feels sudden and unexpected, but it's not random. It's calculated. Because now, for the first time, they're the ones feeling uncertain. They're the ones wondering if they've lost their grip on you. And this is where you realize something important. They never stopped caring. They just buried it under layers of avoidance. Convinced themselves they didn't need to feel anything. But emotions don't just disappear. They resurface in the most unexpected ways. And now, their own jealousy is forcing them to confront something they've been running from. Losing you wasn't as easy as they thought it would be. So what do you do with that? Do you engage? Do you feed into their sudden interest? You let them back in, that choice is yours. But one thing is clear: the moment avoidant starts showing jealousy is the moment they realize they never really let go. And that realization, That's something even they can't ignore. At first, they act like nothing happened. Like everything that led to the end was just a blur, something that doesn't really need to be talked about. And that's the thing with avoidance. They don't do closure. They don't sit down and unpack emotions. They don't dissect where things went wrong. And they certainly don't take full accountability. Instead, they rationalize, they rewrite the narrative in their head, tell themselves a story that makes them feel better about how they handled things. And when they finally break, when they finally start letting those emotions creep in, what is it they do? They justify, they explain, but they don't always take responsibility. You hear it in the way they talk when they come back around. I was going through a lot at the time. I wasn't in the right headspace. I just didn't know what I wanted. And sure, maybe some of that is true. Maybe they were struggling. Maybe they weren't ready. But here's what they won't say. They chose to walk away. They chose to push you away, to detach, to make you feel like you were the only one who cared. And now that they're feeling the weight of their own choices, they have to find a way to make sense of it. They're not necessarily lying when they say these things. In their mind, these justifications are real. But what they fail to see, what they don't want to see, is that avoidance was always the easier path for them. Facing emotions, admitting vulnerability, confronting their own fears, that's what they ran from. And now, as they're standing there trying to explain themselves to you, it's not just about giving you answers. It's about convincing themselves that they weren't the villain in their own story. Listen closely and you'll notice the way they frame it. They won't say, I hurt you. They'll say, I wasn't in a good place. They won't say, I was afraid of commitment. They'll say, I didn't know what I wanted. They soften the edges of their mistakes, not because they don't care, but because accountability is uncomfortable for them. And for so long, they've lived in a world where detachment protected them from discomfort. But this moment of realization, it's forcing them to see themselves in a way they never have before. You might even hear them say things like, I didn't mean to hurt you, or that was never my intention. And while that may be true, it doesn't erase the impact. Because intentions don't undo the pain they caused. Intentions don't change the fact that when you needed them to show up, they disappeared. And now they have to sit with that. Now they have to face the fact that running away didn't make things easier, it just delayed the consequences. The irony is, they thought avoiding emotions would protect them. They thought keeping you at arm's length would prevent them from feeling too much. But in the end, all it did was bring them right back to this moment standing in front of you, struggling to explain what they once refused to acknowledge. Because avoidance only works for so long. Eventually, the weight of unspoken words, unresolved emotions, and missed opportunities catches up. And when it does, they're left scrambling, searching for a way to make sense of it all. So what do you do with that? Do you accept the justifications? Do you let them explain their way back into your life? Or do you recognize that understanding why they did what they did doesn't change what they did? That's a choice only you can make. But one thing is clear when an avoidant finally starts justifying their actions, it's not just about explaining things to you. It's about coming to terms with something they never thought they'd have to face. The fact that losing you wasn't supposed to feel like this. At first, they seemed so certain, so sure of themselves, so confident that walking away was the right choice. That's how avoidants operate. They convince themselves that distance is safer, that detachment is strength, that emotions are something to be controlled or ignored altogether. And when they left, they carried that same mindset with them, believing they could just move forward without ever looking back. But here's what they didn't expect: the regret. The slow, creeping realization that maybe they didn't have it all figured out. That maybe the decision they were so sure about wasn't the right one after all. And when that realization hits, it's not gentle. It's not something they can just brush off. Because for the first time, they have to face something they spent their entire life avoiding. They made a mistake. At first, they try to suppress it. They distract themselves. They stay busy. They convince themselves that time will erase whatever feelings they've been trying to ignore. But it doesn't work. Because the absence of you, the space where you once existed in their life, starts to feel heavier. They realize that what they thought was freedom feels more like emptiness. That the peace they expected to feel never actually came. And that's when it starts to happen. They begin replaying the moments in their head, the memories they once tried to detach from. They start wondering what could have been different, what they should have said, how they should have handled things. And then, for the first time, they're forced to sit with a thought they never thought they'd have to face: I should have fought for this. But regret is tricky for avoidance because it forces them into unfamiliar territory. They've spent so much of their life believing that emotions should be kept at a distance, that attachment is something to fear. And now they're what's feeling it. Now they're the ones struggling with thoughts they don't know how to process. And what do they do when they don't know how to process emotions? They hesitate. They stall. They sit in that uncomfortable in-between space, torn between wanting to reach out and being too afraid to do it. So maybe they don't say it outright. Maybe they don't send that message or make that phone call. But you start to see the signs, the sudden check-ins, the indirect attempts to see where you stand, the little ways they try to insert themselves back into your life without fully admitting why they're doing it. Because saying, "I regret leaving," would mean admitting they were wrong. And that level of vulnerability, that's still something they struggle with. Maybe they test the waters by liking an old photo or sending a message that seems casual on the surface but is loaded with hidden meaning. Maybe they find ways to be around, even if it's just through mutual connections or social media. Maybe they drop subtle hints about their own life, hoping you'll pick up on the fact that they're not as okay as they once pretended to be. But no matter how they do it, the message is the same. They're realizing too late what they lost. And here's the thing: regret doesn't come from nowhere. It comes because something shifted inside of them. It comes because for the first time, they're allowing themselves to feel what they once refused to acknowledge. And it's not just about missing you. It's about realizing that they ran from something real, something that actually mattered. And now they're left wondering if they threw away something they can never get back. But here's what you need to remember: just because they regret it doesn't mean they've changed. Just because they finally see what they lost doesn't mean they're ready to show up the way they should have before. Regret is powerful, but it's not the same as growth. And just because they're feeling it now doesn't mean it's your job to fix it for them. So what do you do with that? Do you open the door again? Do you let them back in? Or do you recognize that their regret is theirs to deal with, not yours to heal? That's your choice. But one thing is certain: when an avoidant finally feels regret, it's because they've come face to face with the one thing they never wanted to admit. Walking away didn't set them free. It just left them empty. They always thought time would fix everything. That if they just kept moving, kept distracting themselves, kept pushing forward, eventually they wouldn't feel anything at all. That's how avoidants deal with emotions. They don't process them, they outrun them. And for a while it works. They keep themselves busy. They fill the empty spaces with work, with hobbies, with surface-level interactions that never really require them to go too deep. They convince themselves that they're fine, that they made the right decision, that the chapter is closed, and there's nothing left to think about. But then something happens. Something cracks the illusion they've built for themselves. Maybe it's a moment of stillness, one they didn't see coming. Maybe it's a song, a scent, a place, a random memory that hits them when they least expect it. Maybe it's seeing you again, whether in person or just through a screen, looking happier, lighter, untouched by the weight of what they're only now beginning to feel. And suddenly they can't run anymore. Because here's the truth: no matter how much they try to suppress it, no matter how much they convinced themselves they had moved on, the emotions never really went anywhere. They were just buried, waiting. And now they've surfaced in a way that can't be ignored. It's different this time. It's not just a passing thought or a flicker of nostalgia. It's something deeper, something that sits in their chest and refuses to leave. This is the moment they finally understand. They get it now. They see what they did. They see how they pushed you away, how they created distance where there didn't need to be any. They see how they took your presence for granted, how they mistook your patience for permanence. And worst of all, they see how they convinced themselves that losing you wouldn't hurt. Because now they're realizing just how wrong they were. And here's what really gets them: it's not just that they miss you. It's not just that they regret walking away. It's the fact that you're no longer waiting. The fact that you're no longer holding space for them, that your life is moving forward without them. And that realization, that's the one thing they never prepared for. Because deep down, they always assumed they had time. That if they ever wanted to come back, if they ever decided they were ready, you'd still be there. That's how they operated for so long, on the idea that distance was reversible, that emotions could be put on pause and picked back up when they were ready. But now they're faced with the truth that's been sitting in front of them all along. Some things don't wait forever. Maybe they reach out, hoping to gauge where you stand. Maybe they try to reconnect, testing the waters to see if the door is still open. But this time it's different. This time you've changed. You're not the same person who once waited for them to figure things out. You're not the same person who accepted breadcrumbs, who settled for half-hearted efforts, who tried to prove your worth to someone who wasn't ready to see it. And that's when it truly hits them. Not just the loss, but the finality of it. The weight of realizing that they don't get to come back on their terms, that life moved forward with or without them. That the thing they spent so much time avoiding, the discomfort, the vulnerability, the truth of their own emotions, wasn't just something they could put off forever. Because now it's staring them right in the face. So what do you do with that? Do you let them back in? Do you give them another chance? Or do you recognize that their realization came too late? That some lessons are only learned when there's no way to go back? That's your choice to make. But one thing is certain, when Avoidant finally understands what they lost, it's not just about missing you. It's about facing the reality that the very thing they ran from was the thing they needed most. And this time they can't avoid it anymore.